You are biologically designed to age. Inside your DNA, there is a countdown timer called the Hayflick Limit. Every time your cells divide, the timer drops. When it hits 0, you don't just stop growing, you enter cellular collapse. Science calls this senescence. I call it built-in obsolescence. An astrophysicist with an equation named after me, I've spent my career analyzing the laws that govern the universe. My goal is to help logical thinkers build unshakable conviction by revealing the hidden unity between modern science and ancient wisdom. 3,300 years ago, a specific code was written into the Torah that claims to override this biological limit. It describes a man who physically died, yet the ancient data says his system never shut down. Science says immortality is impossible. The Torah, on the other hand, says you just need the right enzyme to activate it. Today, we're going to find that switch. There's one law that has always disturbed me more than any other. It's the law that says everything must eventually fall apart. To understand how we break that law, we have to look at the mechanism of your own death. Think of your chromosomes like shoelaces. You know those little plastic caps at the ends that keep the lace from fraying? Those are called aglets. Your DNA has them too. They're called telomeres. At birth, your telomeres are long, about 8,000 base pairs. But every time a cell divides to keep you alive, it pays a tax. It snips off a piece of that cap. Between 30 to 200 base pairs, gone. Forever. It's a biological fuse. When it gets too short, around 1,500 base pairs, the genomic stability collapses. The lace unravels. This is why we age. This is the biological reason why we expire. This mechanism has always bothered me. Why would God program a kill switch into his own masterpiece? It felt like a fatal design flaw. I spent years in academia trying to find a loophole, but the math always came back to entropy. Everything tends towards disorder. That is until I walked away from the standard science textbooks and started looking for the source code in the Torah. And that's where I found an anomaly in the file called Vayechi. But before we encode that anomaly, if you want a deep dive into the sources behind this connection, sign up for my newsletter to receive a sneak peek of my upcoming Torah and science book that you will not want to miss. The link is in the pinned comment under the subscribe button. The parsha is called Vayechi, and he lived. But if you read the text, it's all about death. It chronicles the end of Jacob's life, his funeral, his burial in Hebron. It seems like a cruel irony. The title says life, but the content says death. However, the Talmud throws a wrench in the logic. Tractate Taanis, page 5b declares, Yaakov Avinu lo mes. Jacob, our forefather, did not die. The Gemara asks the obvious question, the same question any rational scientist would ask. But the verses say they embalmed him. They eulogized him. They buried him. If you bury a person, it's because they're dead. But the Talmud insists, no, Jacob is alive. For years, I thought this was just poetic language, a nice metaphor. But then I looked back at the telomeres I mentioned earlier. Remember those protective caps on our DNA? They aren't random. They are built from a precise, repetitive sequence of genetic letters. TTAGGG. TTAGGG. Over and over again. It is the repetition that creates the protection. The Alter Rebbe explains in his magnum opus titled Torah Ohr that Jacob's best years were in Egypt. Why? Because he sent Judah ahead to establish a house of study. He established Torah transmission. This is the engineering breakthrough. The Alter Rebbe explains that Torah education creates a reshimu, a repetitive impression on the soul. Just as the physical body uses repetitive TTAGGG sequence to protect the integrity of the chromosome, the soul uses the repetitive transmission of Torah to protect its integrity against the entropy of the world. The physical mechanism is a mirror of the spiritual source. The Talmud says, just as his descendants are alive, so too is he alive. Jacob encoded his essence into the spiritual DNA of his children. He didn't just teach them, he engineered them. Now, I want to ask you something. When you think about immortality, do you picture a body that never ages or a legacy that never fades? Let me know in the comments if you think true life is primarily biological or spiritual. I try to respond to every single comment. But wait, there is an exception to the death rule. In 1985, scientists discovered an enzyme called telomeres. It is an override code. It actually rebuilds the telomeres. It adds length back to the fuse. But here's the catch. In an adult body, this enzyme is turned off. It is dormant. It only stays active in one place, germline cells. The cells designed for reproduction. The cells that create the future. This is where the Jacob anomaly becomes your reality. Jacob gave a specific blessing to his grandsons Ephraim and Manasseh. With you, Israel will bless. Every Friday night, when you place your hands on your children's heads, you are not just reciting a nice tradition. You are activating the germline function of the Jewish soul. You are the spiritual telomeres. You may be used to seeing that blessing as a sweet ritual. Now you see it as a technology. Without realizing it, you are rebuilding the spiritual caps that the weak has worn down. You are transmitting protective information into eternity. The body may hit its Hayflick limit, but the transmission, the reshimu, never degrades. They buried Jacob. Yes, physical entropy is real. But the Talmud is right. He didn't die because he is the namesake of the Jewish people. That is, his transmission line never broke. We are preparing for the time when this spiritual truth finally overrides the physical one completely, Techiyas Hamesim, when the body itself becomes an immortal vessel for the everlasting soul. To learn all the novel insights connecting science with the parsha, click here for the full playlist, and to watch how I shatter the illusion of science versus religion, click here. If you'd like to sponsor one of these classes, click on the link in the description. Thank you for partnering with me as we build this unshakable conviction together.